All right, so we talked about the 3 different types of pathways to the brain: conscious, divergent, and non-conscious. So now we're going to talk about specifically about the conscious relay pathways. So the conscious relay pathways go from the spine to the thalamus. All 4 types of somatosensation reach conscious awareness: light touch, proprioception, nociception, and temperature. Pathways to consciousness travel upward in the spinal cord via 2 routes: the dorsal columns of the spinal cord and the anterolateral tracts. So I like this picture because it sort of has the spinal column, and then it shows you those little blue projections of where the dorsal column is and where the anterolateral column is. So the dorsal column is conveying touch information, and the spinothalamic tract is conveying signals that the cerebral cortex interprets as pain. So you can almost sort of think about those A beta fibers. Their information is going to end up in the dorsal column on its way to the brain. The second order neuron is going to be in the dorsal column. The A delta fibers, that fast pain, their information is going to travel up the second order neuron in the anterolateral column. Okay? So light touch is the localization of touch and vibration and the ability to discriminate between 2 closely spaced points touching the skin. So that localization of touch and vibration and the ability to discriminate between 2 closely spaced points. Conscious proprioception is the awareness of movements and relative position of body parts. So in tests and measures class, when we were talking about the 2-point discrimination and the vibration with the tuning fork, those sort of things, that was light touch. Conscious proprioception is when we were saying, is your arm up or down? Is your finger up or down? That's being able to be aware of the movements and relative positions of body parts. Stereognosis is the ability to use touch and proprioceptive information to identify an object. For example, a key in the hand identified that vision. So you're rummaging around in your bag looking for your keys. It's dark. You can use your touch and your proprioception to identify that is your house key, and you can unlock the door. So stereognosis depends on touch, proprioception, and some memory information. So say that you had someone who had, maybe they lived in a society that did not have keys, and you handed them a bag and said, rummage around in that bag and pull out the key for me. Well, they don't really have the memory for what a key is. You might have to describe it a little bit further. But for us, we grew up in a society with keys, we can reach in a bag and find a key because we have that memory, we have the sensory information and the proprioceptive information. Sometimes if you have some enhanced memory information, I'll give an example of this from when I was in school. We were in lab and we were testing stereognosis on people, and we had a bunch of different things in a bag, and you had to reach in and identify what they were. And I reached in and I said, oh, this is a car key, and then I said, this feels like a Toyota key. And I pulled it out, and it was. And it's because I used to drive a Toyota, so I was familiar with what a Toyota key felt like. This was in the day before those little the little bleepers that we have now that all sort of feel the same. But and it was a Toyota key. But because I had that additional amount of memory, because I had touched a Toyota key a lot, I was able to identify that by touch. So if somebody was missing either the memory part or the proprioceptive information or the touch information, they would probably not be able to perform stereognosis. And that condition is called astereognosis, meaning you don't have it. So that our light touch and conscious proprioception allows us to do that. So we have the pathways for light touch and conscious proprioception, just like all the other somatosensory pathways, use a 3-neuron relay. The primary or first-order neuron conveys information from the receptors to the medulla. The secondary conveys information from the medulla to the thalamus. And the tertiary conveys information from the thalamus to the cerebral cortex. So this little diagram from the book shows all the vivid detail of what it is. But you know, just looking at this, that light touch and conscious proprioception information is going to travel in the dorsal column up to the medulla, and then in the medial lemniscus from the medulla to the thalamus, and then the projection neurons from the thalamus to the cerebral cortex. The somatosensory areas of the cerebral cortex are arranged somatotopically, meaning it maps in a one-to-one on a location in the body. So the primary somatosensory cortex is receives information that discriminates the size, texture, and shape of objects, and it gets information from certain areas of the body and allows you to discriminate size, texture, and shape of objects. The secondary somatosensory cortex analyzes that information that it receives from the primary sensory area and the thalamus, and it provides stereognosis and the memory of tactile and spatial environment. So that whole thing where I said, oh, it's a car key, it's a Toyota key, I had that memory of that tactile and spatial feel of what a Toyota key feels like. And the secondary somatosensory cortex analyzed that information for me. Primary somatosensory cortex gave me information about the size, texture, and shape of it, and the secondary somatosensory cortex hooked that together with the memory to put together the complete picture for me. So when we talk about the somatotopic arrangement of the information, there's this little drawing. It's on the outside of the cerebral cortex. It's called the homunculus. It's a map developed by recording the responses of individuals who are awake during surgery. So this was done before they had functional MRI and other things like that. So they had people who were conscious during surgery, and they stimulated different areas of their body and brain and saw the connection. But basically it illustrates the proportions and arrangement of cortical areas that contain representations of the surface of the body. So you can see there's a huge representation in the hand and the face, and then smaller representations in the limbs, the leg and the arm, and the little blob sort of down on the bottom right-hand corner is the viscera. So that makes sense in terms of survival, how the mouth and the hand would be disproportionately represented in the sensory cortex, because a lot of the things we need for survival we perceive with our hands and our mouths.